Okay. Oh, we've got enough, so let's get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Deborah McConkey, and I chair the programming committee for HBSWA. I'm thrilled today we have a great speaker and topic, three great speakers, and a wonderful topic that's often overlooked, and that is life and estate planning, protecting your choices, loved ones, and legacy. But before we get started and I introduce our speakers here, I'd like us to, if we can just pick up, make some announcements about upcoming events. We have action-packed things, three additional events in September and two in October. And they range from retail, luxury, and consumer as part of our executive series in that area to our entrepreneurship, How She Built It, our HBS Women's Founder Series with Gina Bartesi from Kindbody. Then we've got a Spotlight Series, Women on Boards, which will be very exciting. And From Poker to the C-Suite, Lessons on Risk, which is going to be very cool. And then Investing in Women, Applying a Gender Lens for Impact. We are jointly doing this with the Kennedy School and the London School of Business, and that's going to be about women's venture funds. And don't forget to sign up for Global Coffee Day, a great way of meeting other people and meeting some new friends as well as old. And then we've got things going on in the local areas where we continue to increase them in places like Delmore, California, London, our monthly breakfasts in New York City, and then in Durham, we have a fun event. And don't forget our roundtables and keep looking at your newsletters because we have two new ones coming up. Okay, so let's talk about our speakers today. So thank you so much, Renee, for organizing this. We have Renee Fry from Gentrio. She's the CEO and co-founder, HBS 99. And we also have Mim Minicello from Hub International. She's Chief Performance and Talent Officer for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and also an HBS AB sponsor. And Jill Munich from homesteaderslife.com, VP of Independent Distribution. So please take it away and feel free to add in other parts of your background you would love for us to know.
Yeah. So, Mim, do you want to introduce yourself while I'm sharing the screen, and then Jill?
Sure. I'm Mim Minicello. As Deborah said, I'm the Chief Performance and Talent Officer for Hub International. We're an insurance broker consultant, and I'll come at that perspective here. And like Renee said, I'm a big fan of Harvard Business School Alumni Association, and I'm really proud to affiliate with you, all of you. So glad to be here today for this incredibly uplifting conversation about death and planning.
All right, thanks. I'm Jill Munich, and I've always been a big fan of obviously Harvard Business School, and of course, getting an opportunity to speak with the Women's Association. This is a really great day for me. So Homesteaders Life Company, we do one thing, we do it really well, and that is end of life planning. So it's a real privilege to work with folks like Mim and Renee, sister Julie Fry, as we put the fun back in funeral. And with that, I'll tell you more a little bit.
So thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we founded Gentrio about 6 years ago, and it means 3 generations because our parents had gone through really expensive estate planning. We didn't know enough about what we didn't know. Our dad had Alzheimer's. And so today we really appreciate the opportunity to hopefully educate everyone. And so the session is going to be recorded, and so hopefully shared later. And then if you do have questions, please make sure to share those because we are leaving time at the end so that we can all try to answer those questions. So first, we always start with, why is this a conversation that matters? And I can tell you so many times when we tell people what we do, everyone has a story about someone who didn't do their estate plan and how much money it cost and just how families and relationships were just utterly torn apart. And so we really think this conversation matters because we all want to make sure we can protect the decisions that we can make. And it's not just for when people pass away, but we talk a lot about estate planning being something for when you're alive as well, like powers of attorney and healthcare proxies. And so it really is something that goes with you across life. And then the relationships depend on clarity. It's like, who's going to make those decisions? Who did you appoint? What decisions do you want made? And this is where we really work to try to help people reduce the stress in times that really are quite stressful and tear folks apart. And so when we talk about legacy too, we want to make sure that people know that it's more than just money. It's all about making sure that you share your values. What are the things that matter most to you? And we all know money is really important, but it really is those kind of the whole package of how do we put all that together and make sure that those are the things that when whatever matters to you get communicated. So just some statistics on women in estate planning, and these are mind-blowing to me. But by 2030, women are $30 trillion. That's huge, amazing. But then also, so many of us are going to be sole financial decision makers because many of us are going to outlive our spouses. But so few people today are protected. And so this is where at my 25th reunion, I got to walk around saying, do you have a will? Do you have a trust? And it was shocking that so few people did, because of course, none of us, and nothing's ever going to happen to us, right? I wish it were true. But then also, many of us are caregivers. Those were some really poignant conversations that I got to have with folks around caring for aging parents. Like we lost our dad to Alzheimer's. He had 7 strokes before he passed away. And our mother literally used to carry around a Post-it note with his medication list and doctor's information. And oh my God, it was just so crazy, the amount of stress that happened. And so we're on a mission, and this is why we want to help educate everyone around what are all the things that you need to be thinking about, and then taking the action to protect all of your choices. So we talked about the great wealth transfer for some time. It's finally happening. Lots of money is trading place. The one thing that people don't understand is that if you don't have some of these documents and things that we're going to talk about in place, up to 10% of the estate's value can be lost to legal fees and to court costs. So your money and your family's money is going to lawyers. So if you put things in place, you can protect not only your decisions, but a lot of the money that everyone's worked really hard for. So generational wealth, it's passing things from one generation to the next. It's money, property, businesses, but also, like I said, to the education and values. And you really have to plan to be able to do this, because just hoping, the hope is not a strategy. And so people are like, oh, everyone will get that. No, they won't. And so this is where we have to really put things in writing. We have to let people know what we want to share with them. And so it really does take work. So generational wealth today is failing because people are not putting this work in. And so this is where second generation, 70% of wealth is disappearing. And then by the third generation, it's down to 10%. And so when we think about our kids and all the people that we care about in our families, if you don't take the steps to protect things, and this is again where we're really fun at parties, so much wealth is just lost. And so this is where, why does it dissipate in this thing? It's around trust and communication blows up, the failure to prepare the heirs and people that you want to have get your assets and things like that. And then sometimes it's as little as you could have a family mission, but if people don't know what you're all working toward, what your values are, things like that tear people apart. And so it's really got to be built on trust, communication, getting documents and things like that in place so that people aren't left to guessing. So 5 obstacles: no estate plan. That's the will, trusts, healthcare proxies, things like that. Probate delays. Probate is a word that a lot of people, they're like, oh yeah, I know that. And once you live it, you realize, oh, I did not know that. But that can tie up money for years. And this is where when someone passes away, if they don't have things put together, that's where the money gets tied up, the property, months, years. And while you think things are going to be happy and everything was tied with a bow, you can realize pretty easily that that's not the case. And 2 years later, you're still in court. Family disputes. I walk our dog pretty much every day, and I had a woman pull up next to me in her truck, and I truly thought I was about to be kidnapped. But she's like, "Oh my gosh, you helped me get back $500,000 because my brother was trying to take the house." And I'd seen her on a walk, and I said, "Hire an estate planning attorney." And she went and did that. But she no longer talks to that brother. And he was trying to convince her of crazy things. That was like, yeah, you need to hire a professional on that. So this is where she no longer talks to him, but it's one of those things that could have been prevented if they'd done proper planning. And so from the heirs perspective, just making sure how to educate people, knowing that you really need to educate people around money and things like that. And then the financial literacy. This is where giving people the skills to be able to deal with things they might be inheriting. So steps to start today, and this is on the estate planning side, but putting things all together in whether it's a online digital vault like we offer, or maybe just a binder, things like that, but making sure that you put everything and get organized. So for instance, my husband and I, we've never combined our assets. And so I saw something in the mail and I was like, "What is that?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, my dad helped me set that up." And I was like, okay, I had no clue. And so we went through and we put everything in our vault and digital vault and organized things. And he's like, "Wait, you own some of that stock?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I've been day trading that for like 2 years." And he's like, "I didn't know that." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So get organized, put things together, make sure that, and if you don't want people to know, that's fine too, but make sure that somehow when you pass away, things can be found. And then talking to your family, if you can make your family part of the plan, it really does help. That so then when maybe you can't talk anymore, people know your plan. Like our dad, when he passed away, he had signed his healthcare proxy saying he didn't want artificial treatment. He didn't want XYZ. And so instead of us really struggling and thinking, "Oh my gosh, this is horrible," we knew his plan and we executed his plan. And the amount of emotional toll that it saved us was absolutely remarkable. And then on the education side, there's a lot of junk out on the internet today. So you really want to make sure that you are going to good sources. Do not trust ChatGPT and other places like that and things created by AI, because those are fantastic, amazing tools, but they do things like hallucinate, making things up. And you can also talk to your friend, but they may not have the same situation that you're going through. So when you think about education, go to trusted sources and places that you know will provide accurate information, because otherwise, too many people are out there just Googling random things that may not be relevant to them, may not be correct. So you really want to make sure you do take the time, because these are important decisions. And then think about your assets, taxes, and how you want to build things wisely and that next generation. And then the formal estate plan, those are the documents. Too many people that we talk to are all about, "Oh, I'm going to get to that will." Last night, I had a conversation with a woman who has a 79-year-old father and a 76-year-old mother, and the mother is suffering from mental issues now. And it's going to be too late, where she's not going to be able to do some of the specific documents. They're going to have to do guardianship and other things that involve more courts. And so if you do things while you're healthy and you can make decisions, you're going to save not just a lot of time, but money as well. So estate planning for us with the foundation, the documents that we know are the foundation, the will, a living trust. The reason people do trust, or they avoid probate and they transfer assets immediately. There's something called a power of attorney, and this is the financial power of attorney, that you need to really make sure you trust whoever you choose as a financial power of attorney. It's a document that you use while you are alive, and that allows someone to make financial decisions related to your assets. The healthcare proxy is a document that is also used while you're alive, and that's around making your healthcare decisions, end of life decisions, things like that. There's a couple different parts of a healthcare proxy, but it's all about the really those decisions that if you can't make your own healthcare decisions, who can make them for you? And then pets, that's been a subject that's really grown a lot in the past, I would say 3 or 4 years, because while they can't be treated like our children, then my 16-year-old dog Butter, it was our first child. And so too many people today think that, "Oh, my pet, everyone will take care of them." No, it doesn't happen. And so this is where pet trust, you can set money aside, the power of attorney. If you one of my HBS section mates is caring for a dog that unfortunately had to be put down while he was in charge of caring for the dog, but they didn't have a pet power of attorney, and so the vet wouldn't do it, and the poor dog suffered for another 3 days. So there's all these documents in place now, and this is why for us at Gentry, we include all of them, but because all kinds of different life moments and inflection points require some of these different estate planning documents. And no matter what, if you share them in your digital vault or make sure everybody knows where the filing cabinet to find them in, I would not suggest ever storing them in a bank safe deposit box, because if people don't have the key, they're not getting to your documents. But they need to be found so that these documents can be used, because we all have heard stories of 5 wills, no will, or is there a will? They can't be found. If people can't find your documents, that's about as good as not having your documents. So you really need to make sure people can find things. So really quick on documents to consider: the healthcare proxy, again, is the healthcare decisions, the power of attorney, financial affairs, the will or living trust, or you can do something like a will and with a living trust with a pour over will, so that catches everything. And then this is about leaving instructions. So you can leave notes, you can leave letters. They may not be legally binding, but you can tell the people that are managing your estate and things like that what you want to have happen. So there's all kinds of different ways that you can let people know what your choices are. And so a trust, for many of us from the HBS world, this could be a really smart move. There's many different types of trust, but for revocable living trust, this is where it will not go public. So when someone passes away, if you have a will, that will becomes public information once you've passed away. So people can see what assets you had, you can see who inherited those assets. And so if you do a trust, and there's all kinds of different types of trust, but if you do a trust, you are not only missing probate, you're keeping that information from going public. So it's really, I think, a huge benefit just from that regard. And so you can put clear instructions in as well, and then even ages for when people can do things, because there's different types of trust. But this is where a trust often works with your will, not instead of it. So like if you do have a pet, your pet's going to be in your will, or what we call the pour will, because a trust can't cover some of those things. So the types of trust, these are some of the things here, and I won't read through all of them, but you can see that it depends on what your situation is. And there are some of us have special needs children. You want to set up things for them. There's trust for that. There's charitable trust if you want to make donations. And then the one type of trust a lot of people have heard about in the Medicaid and things like that, the irrevocable trust, that's the trust that has a 5-year look back. That's something we don't help with, because you really do need to make sure you work with lawyers, because in those types of things, once you set up an irrevocable trust, you are not going to be able to change your decisions. And so you really need to make sure that you are setting things in place that you want to have a lasting effect. So some of the life inflection points, this is where we talk with folks all the time about why estate planning isn't one and done. I've met some people like, oh, I did a will 20 years ago. And we're like, okay, but your kids are adults now. And they'll say, oh yeah, oh, I forgot that. And now if you have an 18-year-old, they in the eyes of a court are an adult. They need to have healthcare proxies so that you can see their healthcare information. And so it's these types of life inflection points, life milestones, around where we really need to be updating our plans and making sure they're current, because you don't want to leave that third child out. Or maybe as you travel, you haven't updated things and people don't know where to find documents, and you're going to be in Uruguay for the next 2 months. These are all these times when you need to think about having an updated estate plan in place. So digital vaults, we encourage those, make sure they're secure, but making sure that you can put things in one place and making sure that you know who can access those documents and when. So for instance, we replaced our mother's Post-it note with a digital vault and put in instant share things so that when emergencies happen, we can all find them. And our brother who lives next door to her is absolutely wonderful and takes good care of her. But from a business decision side, my sister and I are probably a little bit more qualified on that. So we wanted to make sure that even though we're in Massachusetts, she's in Illinois, we still have all those documents to be able to help her. And so this is where, if you are caring for an aging parent, you really want to make sure that you have all the information, access to the documents that we just covered, and making sure that their information is something that's not hidden, because too many people, again, you might not know that your mother invested in crypto. And if you don't have that, that's no longer there. So it's really about making sure that you have everything together in one place, whatever place you choose, to be able to save and share information. And then common mistakes to avoid, and this is especially for some of us with those aging parents, don't let people die without a will. It is so expensive, the amount of time, effort. Keep your documents updated, know where the documents are, and communicate. And this is where you can find lots of checklists. We provide them, but other people on the internet do too, around how do you have this discussion? So Thanksgiving's coming up, and we always tell people, like, you can blame us, go have that really fun discussion. But if everybody's there together, it is amazing how many people get surprised by what they think someone wanted, but then they find out, no, that's not really the case. Like, for instance, my mom is like, I don't want that. And we're like, wait, what? We've been planning that forever. And so this is where, if you have these discussions, it makes things easier when the times are really tough and sad, instead of just being around the table and saying, okay, well, things are good right now. Let's make these decisions and let's make things happen. So wealth isn't just about money. It really is about your traditions, the memories, and helping people understand and educate and life skills, and share your knowledge, share the social capital, the goodwill, and then try to pass these on as well. And so instead of just getting the paperwork in place and knowing that maybe you took care of the money, the assets, the homes, things like that, you can incorporate more so that people can really have the whole picture of what you wanted your life to be remembered as. And so it's not just about money, it's about making sure that you have the memories, the relationships, and everything all together. So build wealth that lasts. Make sure that you know that you should think about helping your parents, because if it gets into sticky situations and maybe you're living states away, it gets expensive, it gets hard really fast. Make sure you're preparing your kids, because I mentioned before, they are adults now in the eyes of the court. And then making sure your spouse has decisions made as well, because there are a few states that allow you to do joint things, but unless you're planning on dying the exact same moment as your spouse, it's really not a good idea. And so you want to make sure that your spouse has been protected as well. And even though I do estate planning, it took me about 3 years to convince my husband to finally get everything all done. And then we had a little party because he finally got everything together. But now we know everybody's wishes. And then you can support your loved ones and making sure that you get to name what you want your legacy to be, which I think is something that so many of us that I've gotten to talk with really truly value. And now you have tools to be able to do that. So I saw there was one question, but I think we'll take questions at the end if that's okay. And now we'll switch over to Mim.
Great. Thanks so much, Renee. Every time I hear you talk about this, I have like another thing I remember I didn't do. So I appreciate getting to be on this panel with you. And I'm going to shift us a little bit from a different lens of planning, and kind of talk about how planning or lack of planning shows up in the workplace. So at Hub International, I mentioned in the intro, we're an insurance broker. So we're helping employers pick out their coverages across the spectrum. And we really get a chance to see that every day that estate and life planning, as Renee just went through, these issues are not just personal, they're actually workforce issues. They affect productivity, the way it feels to work at your company, and ultimately even the health of the organization. So let me ask you to think about this for a second. If you think about the people that you work with today, how many of them do you think, you can back up one, I'm not ready yet, sorry about that. How many of your colleagues do you think are quietly managing aging parents, or going through a divorce, or struggling to make financial decisions after a death? It's really a lot more common than you think. And when employees are caregiving or navigating or trying to filter through a crisis and they don't have a plan, or the plan isn't complete, it doesn't just impact them personally. It spills over into the rest of us in the workplace. You can hit it. So we talk productivity, stress rises, colleagues feel like the impact of the entire thing. So here's what we see on the employer side. First, of course, there's a productivity drain. If you think about it and you're trying to navigate this, people are spending hours during the workday on the phone with maybe insurers or Social Security or probate courts. And many of those that I just named only have work hour phone call accessibility. And then, of course, there's spillover to caregiving stress. 1 in 5 employees is a caregiver of some type in our world. And when caregiving isn't planned for, or I'd say, since I'm a caregiver too, it isn't planned the way we thought it was going to be planned, or it doesn't happen the way we thought it was going to be planned, then that can lead to absenteeism or even turnover. And third, there's that thing about uncertainty and how that just amplifies stress. As Renee talked about, is some of the things that go on in these situations. If people are having trouble talking to each other, or they're trying to make medical care decisions, or they can't get the decision done, or they're missing deadlines, all of that is amplifying the stress that that person is living under, which all adds up to a cost for the organization. More leaves, people struggle with presenteeism, and ultimately can lead to higher healthcare costs for the organization. So that's why I'm saying planning isn't just personal, it's a workforce issue. So let me talk more personally about me for a second for you. This certainly was a wake-up call for me. So I worked in insurance like for most of my life, like everybody does on purpose, just kidding. And I worked for a carrier for a really long time on that side of the house. And once I switched over to this consulting side, I really had an eye-opening lens into what was happening for me around disability insurance for me personally. So in my case, I realized that one of my former employers, the way they had disability insurance set up was it covered 60% of my salary. But my compensation plan, 50% of my compensation came from my bonus, and it wasn't even considered in my disability coverage. I was the sole breadwinner for 2 little kids. I had no idea that that gap existed. I mean, thankfully, nothing happened to me, but that's what happens for so many employees. You kind of go through open enrollment and you're just like, yeah, let me get what I need to do, and never really get a chance to look at what the limits and understand how their policy works until it's too late. And so that's why I wanted to point out for you that there's actually some hidden assets inside the employer plan that really should be part of your estate plan. Let me show you what I'm talking about next. So when I say hidden assets, let me give you a couple of examples. Beneficiary designations. We just talked about that with your wills and your estates. But inside your 401k, inside your life insurance products, don't forget your HSA. You probably have a bunch of money sitting in that now that you've been on those plans for a while. And then you just heard my story about disability insurance. You got to take a look at those. And then there's some really interesting things in employee assistance programs. Some of you have really good ones where you work, and some of you have, sort of bare bones ones. But either way, they're often overlooked. There's actually stuff in there that you could use to help you in your planning efforts. And then some employers offer legal offer estate planning benefits to just get you set up. And the key thing I'd ask you to think about is, when's the last time you took a minute, and Renee just teed us up for this beautifully, you did your will 25 years ago. It might be time to take a look at your beneficiary designations or your disability coverage and make sure that it includes everything that you needed to include. So I didn't want to leave without giving you a couple of critical questions to think about, mostly because this hit me so personally. I wanted to make sure you had it. So let me give you critical disability questions to think about. And I know this isn't fun. I get it. Everyone's like, dude, I don't think this will ever happen to me, and I certainly don't want it to, and I'm there with you. But just take a second. Most of you are probably about to go through open enrollment, or it's coming up or whatever. So this is a really good time to take stock of this. What percentage of your income is covered, like I talked about with my situation? Does it consider bonus or commission for you? How long is the gap before things start? Do you know what happens in that interim? And if you decide to leave, what happens? And that's just as a reality check. I already told you, like, most employer plans are only covering 50 or 60% of your base salary. That's it. And for a lot of people on this call, that leaves a gigantic gap. So that's why understanding the coverage really makes a lot of sense. So what's happening on the employer side? I have some good news for you. Employers are starting to recognize that if I take this seriously, there's a way that the organization can expand support in a couple of really important categories. From a strategic point of view, they're looking at caregiver leave, at resources. You know that swirly thing Renee showed us before about all the different places where you might have a need? Employers are looking at that. At Hub, we call that your life quakes. It's the same picture that Renee showed. What are you going to need during elder care navigation? I mean, shoot, once you go through it, you become an expert of mother of pearl. Here's all the stuff I need. But that's where the employer can sort of step back and say, how do I fill all those needs? How do I consider all those needs? And estate planning resources is one of them as well. And then from a productivity point of view, how is somebody going to access all of the things that I put together for somebody so that when they're in crisis, I can be ready to help them as the employer? And that leads to a less crisis-driven turnover if you've got your portfolio put together in a robust way as an employer. And then finally, there is this really powerful equity point of view that comes into play. Many people have trusts and wills set up. If you're on the wealthy side of things, you maybe already went through this, you got this squared away. But there's a whole cohort of people that you're working with who never get exposed to this, who never have a chance to consider this. All of the complexity Renee just laid out there. So employers are taking that seriously. And for me, that's thinking about platforms like Gentrio, and I swear she didn't tell me to do that. I'm just telling you that's a way to solve that problem, where you get to bring to a wider base of your population as an employer, you get to solve this problem for them. So here's like the key question of why, right? Why would an employer decide to solve all these problems? Let me ask you, what would it signal to you if you're the employer, because I know many of you are, and some of you are probably in these places where you can make this recommendation. What kind of signal does that give to your employees? If the benefits that you put together, if the resources that you've assembled and the way that you can access them were ready when you needed it, becomes the kind of place that you want to work, right? So I've got a couple of takeaways for you. One, like I said, life and real life estate planning, I can get the words out, I promise. Estate planning is not just a personal issue. It's a workforce issue. And your benefits at your employer are a part of your plan. Okay, check your beneficiaries, look at your disability coverage. And employers play this unbelievably important role of being able to level the playing field by making planning tools accessible to a broader swath of employees within the workforce. And there's one action I won't leave before I say this to you. It's open enrollment time for a lot of you. Take a minute with the guidance Renee just gave you and think about what you need to do to update your plan. Don't just treat it as a checkbox activity. Use it as like a mini estate planning session. That's just one simple practical step that you can take right now. And with that, I will turn it over to the fun in a funeral.
Thanks, Mim. Thanks, Renee. You know, Jill Munich here. I'm part of the Homesteaders Life Company team, probably a company no one's ever heard of. We work quietly at the end of life. You know, our mission is to help people design a better farewell. And this just fits so good with what Renee and Mim have just talked about, right? Because I see this is the final piece of your financial plan and should not be overlooked, right? So, you know, there's death and taxes. There is nothing I can help you with the taxes, with the second part, right? Renee, Mim, you guys have that in thrust, but the death part, right? That is a big piece of how we leave our legacy. And I think the other slide had that. We're right, like we're transitioning into honoring your legacy, not just end of life. Like it somehow just drops off and it is just a flat surface. It's not. Your legacy lives on through the money you give, the impressions with your family, all the love and support that you've ever had, and the people you've all met throughout your life. So you live on, and we'll get to it. You can go ahead and advance to the next one. I think of it end of life and like why pre-planning matters, kind of like a nice dinner party. And for those of you who've ever had the opportunity, and I love to host at my house, it is a meal to remember. It is a conversation remembered with great people, right? We walk away from that event always thinking the best. It was so much fun. I want to do it again. Well, pre-planning it can be an overwhelming experience, right? But when we do it right and we do it with being deliberate, we're so much more helpful. And let me give you a few stats and some things. If you don't pre-plan, there's about 125 questions a funeral home operator, funeral director will have to ask your loved ones. You're going to get to about question 5 and people do not know the answers. What were your favorite flowers? Favorite hymnals? Who wants to be the one to say the last words? All those gets really complicated really fast. And then add to it, if you don't have your estate in plan, all of a sudden people are worried about money. It's a mess. And we're going to share some of these resources. So today is one of my little parting gifts. We're going to give you that 125 questions just to start. It can be a little bit of an agitator. It's a great opportunity at something at Thanksgiving to, hey, I didn't know. And what would you have wanted? It's kind of fun. You can do it with your siblings, but then when the parents start listening, it's kind of an interesting conversation. Again, it's about honoring your legacy. I think the next stat I have, the widows. There are 6% of widows in America. When we look at our research, and I believe my colleague Pam Cleese, one of our lead researchers at Homesteaders, is on today, our research shows that we deal with 25% of our policyholders are widows. Well, what does that tell me? That tells us that people went through a really difficult situation with their spouse or a close loved one and did not want them to have that happen to themselves and to leave that second to die or the inheriting generation to have to guess why. So that's probably what drove that. And then I'd like to touch on grief. Grief begins with the funeral. When we don't allow that opportunity, whatever that means, it doesn't have to always be the old traditional way. It can be anywhere. It could be on a beach. It can be wherever is important. It could be the dinner party with your family. Allowing that and coming together to share, because grief is forever. It never goes away. And one of the things we do work at Homesteaders with is all those grief resources. And we speak with over 1 million people a year, and it is a critical piece of what we do. We're always astonished at the level in which people engage with us, and we don't even know them, right? We don't really know them, and yet they reach out. Most of ours is in a text-based situation with live humans, not AI. And it is an amazing experience. And then also we have some other data on our policyholders that say that they're completely or very satisfied with their planning experience, no matter who you work with. And that is any funeral home, crematory, funeral home in America. These people are here as really, really good resources for you. And then the other one I'll share is the cost of dying. Empathy.com does an amazing cost of dying report each year, and their last statistics coming out of 2023 really caught my eye, and I wanted to share that today. Is 79% of the people that had a close death, a family member or friend, ended up using their own funds to help plan that final funeral. And 50% of those people went into debt. That's a lot. What are we leaving for our friends, inheriting generations? And the other little interesting little piece is that there's 750,000 GoFundMe memorialization pages today that exist. It's actually over 750,000. I don't intend to ever be out in a GoFundMe for my life and for my death. And I would wish that for you as well, because I think we have lives that have been well lived, and our deaths should be, in that same format. Let's go ahead. So I get to work on the innovation side. That's what drives me. So we know that 8% of America funds and plans their funeral. Only 8. Isn't that kind of crazy? That was mind-blowing for me when I first started in the industry about 15 years ago. I had come out of traditional insurance, had my own GA, past financial planner. So I had a lot of insight into a lot of the work that both Mim and Renee are talking about. Maybe not to the level at which they brought it forward today. It really isn't, again, more nuggets in there, but only 8%. So I get the privilege of working on what do the other 92% want, right? Where are we going to want? Do we want to work with our credit unions, our banks, our employers, right? So those are the kind of products and services that I get the privilege to bring forward. Again, trying to help people design a better farewell. So we can go ahead and advance. Peace of mind and resources. Again, I really appreciate what I learned from Min and from Renee today, but this is your final piece of your financial plan. So we also are going to include not only the 125 questions that would be asked to plan a funeral, but I have a planning guide that I wanted to make sure I got in everyone's hands. And if you need more resources, please just follow up with me. But it is your story to tell, and I would love for you to start working on that. It can just be a nice, you're watching TV, but it is, as I think Renee said, this is that valuable piece. I update mine all the time. So I'm always telling my spouse, hey, I updated again. I learned a new song that I want played. I found a different poem that I liked better than the one I had before, right? Because the world is evolving and I'm learning new things and I want different things at my funeral. And as I age, I'll continue to update it. So again, I applaud, do the work, tell your story. It matters. Thank you.
Yep. And so now, and we'll put the links in the chat, or we'll get them so that you can, we'll send them out to everybody. But now I think I'll stop sharing and then we can start answering questions. And so I think, let's see, I saw someone had one question, and let me see if I can see it. Can you share recordings, recording or put recordings in digital vaults? As far as for Gentrio in the digital vault, you can do that. And so that's where we encourage people to save pictures, put recordings in there, tell their stories. And so one of the things we just did with our mom was we worked through ChatGPT to have her tell all her stories and go year by year and funny things that happened. And it became, anyway, we had a lot of fun doing it. And then we all started in the vault. And it was really great because my 14-year-old son, who thinks he's going on 34, oh my gosh, he got so many materials that he's going to use every family party coming up. But yes, we stored all that so that when things aren't as happy, the stories are there. Does anyone have other questions for us? So Jill, I think you had thought up some questions too that people had asked you about some of the things that commonly come up, and then maybe you could share.
There's a question in there too after Jill goes.
I have a quick question too, if you're taking, hi, my name's Lauren. Thank you for taking the time. I specifically have a question about kind of like determining the asset level for when you should have a will versus a trust. And this is like a question specifically for my mom. She's a widow and, was sort of told that she probably didn't have enough assets to justify a trust, but she does have, her own home and, a good retirement account. So I'm kind of wondering like what that level is for maybe a non-HBS person who probably should have a trust.
Great question.
Yeah. So from the trust perspective, lots of people can use a trust. Like I think a trust is a great idea because if you do have a home, right, you want to make sure that that home gets managed. And so you can avoid probate and take care of that. And so a lot of people are like, oh, you need 5 million in assets. You need this number. And we don't really tell people that it depends on a number. It depends on what we think you're managing. So things like a home, and it's so easy to do a trust now. You have to rename things into the name of a trust to make sure the trust is named as the owner. But short of that, they're pretty easy and they're affordable to do now. And so I think in the past, it used to be that you had to pay, like our parents paid $10,000. And so people are like, oh, you don't have a big enough assets to go pay that $10,000. But now that you can do it for like $150 and things like that, it makes it a lot more affordable. And then when she does pass away or when things happen, it is so much easier to deal with something in a trust than going through probate and dealing with the will. So I would say that any more trust or something all of us can think about.
It depends on where you live too, right, Renee? States come into play differently. You have federal limits and then local limits. So you have to pay attention to all that and you need that updated. Yeah. That's the benefit of using a platform that has all of that stuff updated in it, because it really does matter. And that's why, sorry to run on, but that's why an answer from a buddy of yours is only as helpful as your scenario matching, which is unlikely.
Yeah. And what Mim is talking about is true. So every state has different laws. Like Louisiana still has the French Creole still sets the standards for how they deal with things. And so this is where no matter what you choose, you really need to make sure that whoever you're working with does state specific legal documentation creation, because it does matter.
There was a question about long-term care insurance. Yes, that's part of your consideration and getting wise counsel, not just a sales pitch. I forgot who asked that question. Gollum, just make sure you get somebody, it's a complicated insurance, and I know I work in insurance, but you got to get your situation considered, not just the sales pitch is what I would say. Sorry.
Yeah. And then I see now I finally found the question, so thank you. But one of the things around the probate delays. So on the probate delays, what happens is that if you have a will, your will has to be approved by the probate court. And so if things aren't easy and set up and just rubber stamped, or people come out of the woodworks trying to argue and challenge things, you can have lots of disagreements that happen. And so this is where we encourage people to have your documents, and most states, and if they don't, you need to have like your will and things like that notarized. And so signed, notarized, and then you need to have that official copy. But what you want to do, and this is where you want to let people know this exists. These are my decisions. I've made these decisions. Here they are. And things like that can make probate go so much faster, because what happens is if people don't know there's something well documented, or they think that, something was left out, that's where the probate delays really start, and people come in out of the woodwork. If they think there's money, it is amazing. And so this is where you want to make sure that you can dot your I's, cross your T's, and put things together, because that will help reduce the probate delays. And then dying intestate, that is a word that we hope no one learns, because it means you died without an estate plan. And that's where you see probate cases go 2 or 3 years, because when you die intestate, the state has already set laws, and each of the 50 states is different around who will inherit what your children get, what your spouse gets. And if you have children that weren't yours, like, they don't get anything. It is a horrible thing. And so what happens then is that those also get very complicated. And those are the ones when people get into like 2 or 3 year fights about things that a lot are a result of dying intestate. And then additional insurance options.
Yeah, so probably the right thing to do is get you somebody to talk to about your situation. That's the way I'd think about that. So I could, my contact's in there. So if you want somebody, you probably have a friend that does insurance, because we all have a friend who does insurance. You could kind of start there. I just always want to watch the sales pitch. That's my concern. You want an answer, not whatever they're going to make cash off of. And people are asking a bunch of questions about when to set up the trust, and how come it costs $4 million to do it. And I'm honestly, just personally, the trust thing for me was a freeze point. I could not move past it forever, because I knew it was going to be cash, and I didn't want to spend it in the wrong way. So I was going to dump that at you, Renee, and be like, okay, you got people on here like, hey, I was quoted $5,000. What would you be telling them to do?
Oh, and I saw one of the questions too. It says, how can you do it for $150? But it's software. So just like TurboTax now you can do your taxes. What we do is we've made it so that people can now do it. It's the software. And so there's no lawyer sitting there with you, but it's the software that's there for you. And that's why it's so affordable now. And what we found is that the lawyers were using software too. And this is where, when we got started, and then my sister would like to join in, because Julie is here with me and she's one of our co-founders.
No, and I just want to make sure that everyone understands that this creates that Gentrio helps you create that legally binding entity in the trust or joint trust. But then the next step is you have to fund that trust.
Yeah, someone mentioned that. That's great, Joel.
Right. So you want to like redeed your home or rename the assets. Just so that everybody's
And
so
there's
someone said, like, sorry, go.
No, I just want people to know that there's instructions on doing that, because one of the things is that you do have to legally change the name of your home to be owned by now this trust.
It's like you built a house and you got to put the furniture in it. If you don't
right.
put the furniture in it, all you got is
That's what funding the trust means.
Yep.
And there's tons of information on gentrio.com. And there's other great sites too. But and then if you do have any questions, we put our email addresses in there. And so you should just feel free to email any one of us and ask us, because I saw there's a great question on navigating American and British things. And
that's hairy.
It does get complicated.
Yep.
And so on that one, I can help you meet some people that you might want to talk to, because you do have to navigate things. And unfortunately, we've seen too many people get charged way too much when you don't need to be charged that. So send us an email and I can get you to some of the right people.
And that's for me why, depending on the stage of life you're in, you're looking at a platform like Gentrio to get this started. You can change it afterwards. Okay. You're not locking yourself in for the rest of your life. Like Jill was talking about, like, hey, in the digital vault, put the song in that you want. Well, if you need a minimal trust to get yourself started, fine, just do it. Get the will going. Oh my God. My will. All right. Sorry. This is not a therapy session, but my first version on the will on a recorded line, I only had one of my kids in it for a really long time.
Yikes.
A really long time. He doesn't know, but maybe you won't all meet him. He's in it now. Okay. All right. Sorry.
Oh my gosh. And then, so some of the questions about like quoted for the $5,000 in New York City to do the trust. And this is where if you're doing things like an irrevocable trust, you want to go to an attorney, but things like the living trust, right, which is the revocable, those things you can do at Gentrio. There's other places. And it's, again, the lawyers are using software. We've made it software so that that you can use this now. And so the reason, to go to an attorney, because there definitely are times and things like that. Like if you do, if for the people who have British and US residencies and things like that, fantastic reason why you would want to go to an attorney. We do a lot for blended families and things like that because that's pretty much the norm now. But if you are concerned that you're going to leave someone out, or you have property, and we help people to that property in like 3 or 4 or 5 different states. But if you think it's really complicated or complex, those are great times to go to attorneys because they can help you set up things, but they are going to be charging more. So if you get started, and this is where we try to help people meet estate planning attorneys, the one thing I can tell everybody is if you are going to use an attorney, make sure they are an estate planning attorney. And this is where, even from the software side, like we only specialize in estate planning because it really is something that is complicated. And so lawyers will hang shingles and say, I can do this. And the problem is no, they can't. We had to actually let one lawyer go because he didn't understand that every state has their own laws, and every state, how you set things up really does matter. So take that into consideration. And then let's see. And then people say, when should you do a trust? So living trust and things like that, you can change anytime. So you can go ahead and just set them up whenever. It's really not going to matter. The one type of trust that people ask us, the irrevocable trust, a lot of people use that for Medicaid planning.
Yeah, that's later. Yeah.
And that's much later because you're not changing the irrevocable trust. And we did a survey for people asking them if they understood, and they said, no, I can do that. We're like, irrevocable, and they didn't get it. And so, but that's one of those things that an irrevocable trust is around Medicaid, and so it's much later in life, 65, 70, things like that.
Yeah, I probably want you to think about that at 55 if you gave me my choice, because you need to be, you look at how your state operates as well. The look back period can really impact things. So just if that's important.
Yeah, the look back period is something
But if you bought the long-term care insurance or you have a ton of assets, you're protecting your stuff a different way anyway. What we're trying to do right here is talk to this wide expanse of potential people. Like, you'd answer the question depending on your complexity. If you had a lot of assets that you're putting in trusts and things like that, you do need an estate attorney. Go get somebody to help you. That's the right thing to do.
No, and we tell people that too, because you want to make sure that you make decisions. And then the one thing that I'm excited about is that we set up is that you can now help your parents with this. So we had to set that up in Gentrio because so many parents have put this off, and it is a sad day because things will happen, right? Like death and taxes, like Jill said, right? Like something's going to happen. And then this is where, and I will find a way to put on Jill's checklist and things like that. But when we started working through with our mom, she was a teacher, and she is so well loved. Like when she walks around our hometown, Mrs. Fry, Mrs. Fry, Mrs. Fry. And she's like, I don't want a funeral. I don't want anything like that. We're like, okay, but you aren't being fair to your fan club. And so it became this like crazy discussion where we didn't realize how she felt. And then once we all talked through it, she's like, oh, I didn't know people love me like that. So it became this weird emotional discussion that if you use the checklist and some of the things like that, you can learn things about people that you talk to 10 times a day, but you haven't had these really powerful conversations with them because they're not the most fun to have, but there are things you want to know. Right, Jill, and maybe you can add a few things too around. I know you've gotten to have, like, you've done some wonderful things to help people because these are really tough times.
Yeah, they are. And again, I think we're sharing, or Deborah, we've provided the planning guide. Again, it's just a nice way to start getting down on paper. You can do it electronically, of course. Your thoughts, your wishes, right? It gives you that baseline. I'll stay out of the estate planning side of it. I think you guys have covered it, but I think that's a really important first step to have those discussions. And then, start, it's okay to even go down to any funeral type provider. You can put yourself on file. You don't have to fund. I highly recommend funding, and I would believe most people on this call have probably the resources to be able to do it. We have, payment plans for all budgets, but I think it's important to at least get something on file. So that way, if there's an unexpected death, and it happens, right? I recently had a couple of friends pass away that were very unexpected, and their families, I get the phone calls. All my close friends, when something unexpected happens, I get the call. Who do I
Jill,
work?
if they wanted to, I mean, I learned a ton when I first met you, so my world has changed having listened to you. How do can they go right to you to say, hey, who do I talk to about this the funding
Absolutely.
exercise? Okay.
Absolutely. I can put them with someone I know most people in the funeral world in the space,
Okay.
United States, because we work with everyone. And so I go to all the big conferences, and there's amazing. I don't care what's on TV today and the mortician, there's going to be a bad apple everywhere. But our industry is amazing. There are loving, smart, efficient, effective people who work in the funeral profession everywhere. And I'm always blown away and with admiration and love with the kind of care and respect, because they go beyond when someone dies internationally, right? We have products for that, but that is still a very difficult in the heat of the moment situation, right? You can put
If you're on this call and your parents are like, and your parents want to do everything for you, or you are a parent and you want to do everything for your kid, for me, Jill's answer is really compelling, because I'm not picking the funeral home down the street from where I live right now. I can pick an option through her that it doesn't matter where we end up in retirement. Like, I don't know where I'm going to end up yet, but I can access my plan through Jill a different way. I know I sound like a salesman for Jill, but I just thought it's a really cool problem that she's solving. So I
Well,
just
it is. And a lot of this stuff is portable, so don't get stuck
yeah,
that
yeah, that's why I
might
loved
not
it.
know. And
Yeah,
mom and dad live in the villages, but we're from Boston, and
sure.
I'm not sure. That's why you want to talk about it. But then there's can be plans and products in place so when that day comes, and
Want to
it,
make
it
sure they
is a
have a Red
much
Sox funeral that we don't violate that.
right,
All right, good.
right,
Okay.
not a Cubs funeral, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
different meeting.
but
No,
Yeah,
people care about that stuff. Like
they do.
people don't think we're real people, and so they'll send us crazy notes, and we're like, okay, can't do that. But okay, and then two last questions on there because we're running out of time.
oh yeah,
But
sorry.
quickly, so the list of documents putting into the digital vault, we have a lot of blogs on gentrio.com that suggest that. And then our digital vault, actually, we've spelled out like what types of documents, but you really want to make sure where we've used the word beneficiary a number of times today, like that's a life insurance policy and things like those are not part of your will. The beneficiary wins those documents. And so you want to make sure that in your digital vault, you have pictures, you can take pictures now, you can put copies in, but make sure people know those type of documents exist, because it's not just your will, your healthcare proxy, but it's any type of those beneficiary documents too, or
Your life insurance, your HSA, make sure they're all done.
exactly
Yeah,
make
right.
sure you have all those type of documents and information, crypto and things like that. And then there was a question too on a ladybird deed, and that's a little bit more complicated, but the one thing I can tell you is that it depends on your state, because each state has different rules and things like that. So Christy, if you want to go ahead and email me that, I can try to help you a little bit, but it's around making sure the grantor retains full control over their lives. But the one thing we've learned in the estate planning world and kind of these things is that your state laws dictate so much of what you are going to be able to do.
Right.
And so that's where you really need to make sure that whoever you're using and whatever trusted thing, like you can't run through Chat GPT and get these things. You can't, even if you use Google and things like that, there's general advice. But for a lot of these things that we're talking about today, you really need to make sure that you use things that are state specific, because that will make a difference. So thank you all. I know we have 2 minutes left, and I think you have all our emails there. And then what we'll do is we'll share Jill's documents and things like that, because I didn't have time to put them in here, but we'll send out the deck, and then Jill has a number of calculators and things, and just really fantastic information that, again, when we sat down with our family, we learned so much that I hope for all of you, you can do it in times that are good. So thank you, and we really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much. This was so informative. Really learned a lot. And boy, do I have a long list of things to do.
Well, anytime you want to have us back, because like I have to tell you, like one of the things we started talking about, those life inflection points, like life milestones and stuff, that might be something that we might come back and talk about too, because people don't understand, but turning 65, oh my God. So there's lots of fun things that, again, were really fun at dinner parties all together. So thank
Oh,
you.
Bye,
great.
everybody.
Thanks so much. Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.
Business school, appreciate everything. Thank you.
Thank you.